Okay, I think it's we have enough in the audience to get things going. My name's Professor Chris McAuliffe. I'm the head of the Centre for Art History and Art Theory within the School of Art and Design at ANU. And my role today is just to introduce you to some of the activities we undertake within that centre, which we abbreviate to CAHAT for ease of repetition. And I'll also speak to our programs, undergraduate and graduate, and invite questions from you as well. Along the way, I'll say a little about some of our staff and their activities and indicate to you where study within the Centre for Art History and Art Theory might take you. I want to begin by getting the PowerPoint to work. This is the usual, there we go. The School of Art and Design building, of which CAHAT is a part. And I do want to acknowledge and pay respect to the region's traditional custodians, the Ngambri, Ngunnawal and Ngunnawal peoples and their associated clans and groups, their elders past, present and emerging, on whose traditional land we meet and work, and from where we're broadcasting today. And this also gives me an opportunity to give you a first indication of the background and expertise and breadth of the work of my colleagues within CAHAT. This photographic portrait of a significant Ngunnawal elder, Auntie Matilda, was in fact shot by a member of staff within CAHAT, Associate Professor Brenda Croft, who was a finalist with this image in this year's National Photographic Portrait Prize. And for those of you following up, there's a great Q&A between Brenda and Auntie Matilda at the link at the bottom of the screen. And that's an indication of the kinds of backgrounds that many of our academic staff have. They have worked or are continuing to work as artists, as curators, as museum professionals, as well as scholars, researchers and educators. And their activities reach into many of the major art museums and cultural policy networks, not just within Australia, but across the region and especially into Asia. So our education and our research is very much in line with the ANU identity of being a very active university within the region, within public policy, and engaging with industry sectors. And I'll talk a little bit about that as we progress. I'll say a little about the study of art history. When we study art history within our programs at CAHAT, we look at material practices, the making, the circulating, the institutional framework within which you encounter art, as a matter of philosophy and as the basis of our understanding of art, but also obviously because we are housed within an active school of art and design and mix with practitioners every day. Our study of art history then engages with material practices, with social situations, the way that art circulates, art's historical meanings, but also contemporary perspectives. We're very engaged with what art might have meant in the past, but what it now means for us in the present. And I'm sure you're aware in this, the year of challenges to historical monuments around the world, that historical artworks are frequently reactivated within contemporary perspectives. This, I'm sure you may have visited Thomas Woolner's sculpture of Captain Cook in Hyde Park in Sydney. And this is its historical moment, the unveiling of that statue in 1879 with much pomp and ceremony. The number of people who attended this ceremony proportionate to the current population of Sydney would have meant something in the order of 300,000 people attending the event today. So that percentage of the population of Sydney attended. So it was a massively public and active moment. This statue clearly meant a lot to a lot of people, and art history obviously seeks to understand what it meant to those people. The artist himself said of his subject, Captain Cook, and I quote, "It is curious to observe the effect Cook's name has on persons. It is like the sound of a trumpet. Such is the growing force of an heroic life," unquote. I expect that Cook's name still has an effect on persons today, and perhaps is like the sound of a trumpet, but a discordant one for a lot of people. And the heroism attributed to Cook in the 19th century might be challenged now. In fact, contemporary images of the situation of that statue are in marked contrast to its celebration in 1879. And in fact, it's that kind of dynamic that we look at repeatedly in art history to understand the coming into being of artworks in the past, to understand what they meant, what was invested in them in the past, and how those meanings might have changed over the years, so that our strange historical relationship is that we deal with the past, but the past is, so to speak, always alive there, right here and right now for us in the artworks that we encounter. A curious mix of the historical and the contemporary in just about all the artworks we engage with. Just to give you another example of that conundrum, this is a portrait of the English philosopher and polemicist Thomas Carlile, made incidentally almost the same time as Woolner's Thomas Cook. For the 19th century was the age of heroic history, history as the deeds of great men, and it was Thomas Carlile who actually coined that notion in a book called On Heroes and Hero Worship. He became a hero of sorts himself amongst his intellectual peers and a very popular thinker and worthy of a portrait now housed in the National Portrait Gallery in London. In 1914, someone had a different opinion of Carlile. A woman by the name of Margaret Giggs, active in the campaign for women's suffrage, took a meat cleaver to the painting while it was on display in the National Portrait Gallery. And as you can see from this historical photograph, inflicted some small damage to the work before she was apprehended. The great curiosity, at least from an art historian's perspective, is Margaret Giggs's remark there below in the courthouse where she was on trial. When asked if she regretted her attack on the painting, she noted, on the contrary, she had no regrets at all, and that she believed she had added value to the work and made it of greater historical interest because she had honoured it with the attention of a militant. A very topical remark, I think, even for us today, the notion that the historical interest in artworks waxes and wanes, and in a sense, an artwork might even be reauthored by official, unofficial, and even illegal attention to it by later parties. So I hope that gives you a sense of what we grapple with, understanding the art's materiality, how it was made, how it circulated, how it was valued in its day, and how that value might shift and how our values might impact on an artwork. I can't resist a little aside here. One of the museum guards during the investigation reported that he was a little suspicious of Margaret Giggs when he saw her in the museum because he'd seen her there the day before, and he couldn't understand why anyone would want to visit an art museum twice in consecutive days. Her very interest in art seemed suspicious to the museum guard, quite ironic. in the end. But let me say a little about our programs now, and I'll be happy to take questions from you around any, if you like, internal details of these offerings. You can see that our program is in art history, at an undergraduate level, is in art history and curatorship. So we are studying art in its history, in its making, in its theoretical structures, but we are also studying the management, the display, the cataloguing, the programming, the exercise, if you like, of artworks in collections. And many of our undergraduate courses are specifically around the history of museums, of curating and collecting. Many of our courses involve visits to active museums and galleries. We draw upon university collections and many of the cultural institutions in Canberra for our teaching, and many of our assessment exercises mimic real-world activities that might be undertaken in the museum and gallery sector. It is not a direct professional qualification in the sense of a certification, but it is definitely at the bachelor's level a direct introduction to the job of working in and around cultural organisations. And you can see here in this image a group of our third year bachelor's students installing art in the School of Art and Design gallery. You can see also that we offer honours and programs with specialities in both art history and curatorship, and also an art history, art theory specialisation, and likewise coursework master's programs as well. I'm sure you're aware also of the internal flexibility of study at ANU, and there are many threads connecting our coursework within these art history and curatorship programs with other disciplines around the campus, and I'll speak to some of those as I progress. Where you might go with a study in art history and curatorship is a fair question in this day and age. I'm always intrigued by the sheer scale of the business of putting people in touch with artworks in Australia. You can see from some of my notes there that the so-called GLAM sector, galleries, libraries, archives and museums, manage an enormous number of objects. Let's do some crude math there and say that's 4 objects for every person in Australia. But you don't get to keep them in your home, someone else looks after them for you. It is an extremely complex national business, and as you can see from the data there, spends approximately $2.5 billion annually. Separately, there are analyses that indicate that the art sector, the visual arts as such, generates over $1 billion a year in revenue. So whilst ironically the study of art history is seen as perhaps a niche area in the humanities, it is a big business. 1 in 5 Australians will visit at least one museum every year. It's a massive business. You will see opportunities for professional development and employment in complex teams within major museums and galleries, organisations with staff headcounts of over 150. But you will also find yourself engaged with very small regional cultural organisations. They might be art galleries, they might be local government recreation and culture programs, but it's really sleeves up there and you need a multitude of skills. I've indicated some of the activities towards which an art history and curatorship program would direct you. I think flexibility is the name of the game within the culture sector. You have to be very pardon me, you have to be very nimble because many skills are called into operation in any given project. Collection managers looking after the asset as such, the material elements of a collection. Curators presenting exhibitions. Education connecting with local students. Adult education and lifelong learning as well. Marketing and communication, fundraising, development, community engagement. You can see the list goes on. They're working in the culture sector now, as you can see from my slide, is about events, it's about customer service, it's about education, it's about markets, it's about promotion. It gets involved in public health and well-being campaigns, community consolidation campaigns. It's a remarkable, if you like, constellation of activities circulating around these material objects, artworks. And you can see down the bottom of my screen there that there is a massive national economy. Interestingly enough, in this year of COVID-19, much controversy around industry support for what is a substantial industry. And again, I want to stress that most of our academic staff have worked directly in that sector. Myself, I've run an art museum for 12 years before I returned to academia. Many of our staff have worked in major museums as collection managers and curators, as well as in the media and in cultural policy. So it's not an abstract education, it's one that draws on intensive networks throughout that massive national sector. So a few indications of some of our people and some of the areas of study. You will know, I expect, that degrees at ANU can be remarkably flexible, and a major or minor in art history and curatorship can be linked to many related disciplines, and I indicate some of the typical areas of complementarity there on your screen. By area studies, I mean, for example, Asian studies, with which we have a very strong link, being an academic division with significant Asianist specialisation. But we also link to language studies, to studio art programs, to philosophy, to history. We've got strong links into computer science and digital humanities as well, which is very much where museum engagement is going these days. The virtual encounter and the enrichment of the visit with digital technologies in the museum. I do note also we have a deep commitment to what we call object-based learning, that is, being with the art while you're studying it, and run in-country study tours for course credit into Europe and Asia. And here is one of our academic staff, Chaitanya Sambrani, on a recent tour. Chaitanya has just joined a committee at the Art Gallery of New South Wales to advise them on strategies for developing their engagement with Asian art and culture as part of that multi-million-dollar redevelopment of the Art Gallery of New South Wales. So you can see how our people directly connect with activity in the current cultural sector. Our recent award to Associate Professor David Hanson for a book that he wrote to accompany an exhibition at the National Portrait Gallery that was recognised as the best book on British art history for that year. Again, an indication that deep museum background. David worked for many years in the Tasmanian Museum and Art Gallery, connects with a capacity to communicate through exhibitions and to write and deliver what was a remarkably handsome book about a fascinating and forgotten figure in 19th century art history. And to return to my earlier comment, You can see even from that glimpse of that strange flower vendor there on the cover of David's book, that the study of art history takes you into histories of commerce, of costume, of class, and people scrabbling for a living. And in this particular instance, maybe even an aesthetic debate about distinctions between realism and beauty. He's a rather ragged figure. Charlotte Galloway, I think, embodies many of our research specialisations, but also the distinctive character of ANU in its statutory commitment to engagement with the region and its deep focus on cultures of Asia, which you'll find articulated in the university strategic plan. Charlotte's worked for many years in Myanmar in what I would call a nation building exercise in developing museum studies skills and museum management skills in Myanmar. And you'll see there recognised for her contribution to the recent addition of the Bagan temple site to the UNESCO World Heritage listing. So that is an indication of real hands-on academic research in the field that changes cultural perspectives. Just by way of summary, before I open up for your questions, I want to stress again how at CAHAT, the study of art history and art theory is very much connected to a daily engagement with the display of art, the making of art, and the writing about art. All of these images here are from the School of Art and Design, where we have an active gallery and active studio programs, as well as publications like Art Monthly Australasia coming out from our building. So I can take questions now with the help of Candice and Maxwell, and I'm happy to hear any of your questions, whether they're about your interests, your thoughts about your intellectual and professional development, or if it's about the comings and goings and the dailiness of the study of art history. And I should be able to see any questions you throw up in the Q&A field, and Max and Candice will have their eye out as well. Whilst you, there's one popping up. Is there any way you can do art? Is there any way you can do art history as a minor or elective under other degrees? Well, you can always do art history as a minor within the general Bachelor of Art degree. And Max, sing out if I'm leading anyone astray here. It's the minor component is a reduced number of art history, art theory courses, leaving you ample flexibility to do other programs. Something in the chat. Oh, Max says I got it right. Oh. So the short answer is yes, it's a very common thing to do. It's simply a matter of looking at the course structure and determining the weight of 6-point courses that you would do towards the completion of your bachelor's. The more weight you put in, the more likely it is you're doing a major. The less, the more likely you're doing a minor. You'll also notice on our course guide page that we recommend certain major minor focuses from around the faculty or the College of Arts and Social Sciences that we think are relevant to you. I'll wait to see whether there are any other. Oh, it's got a hair trigger. There you go. Just so for those of you who are wondering, the image there is a project by a Scottish artist, Jacqueline Donaghy, who herself turned up at university, at art school in the United States, and found herself as an outsider a little isolated and alone. So she decided that her art project would be an advice bar, and she set up a little table in the art school and invited anyone amongst the student cohort there to ask her advice, which I don't think was always great advice because she wasn't a professional, but she extended the hand of friendship and really opened up the student community there. So it's a great little project in a social space rather than in a gold frame on a wall. Any other questions forthcoming? I see we're, I don't know about you all and where you're calling from, but I'm a little distracted by the snow that's falling outside my window here in Canberra, which for someone who has only moved to Canberra full-time recently is a bit of a shock. Okay. I wonder if I'll just indicate here some additional sources of information. Perhaps many of you have already been looking at these. Under those links, you will find more specific detail about course offerings and structure. And I do want to stress the amount of flexibility that's open to you. If I can just give one small example, there is a major minor offer in digital humanities within the ANU BA degree, which is very much geared towards the use of digital technologies for interpretation, engagement, explanation, a very dynamic approach to online publication and interactive exploration. And that is very much tying together with our art history and art and curatorship program, because I'm sure you're all aware that's where the sector is going. What sort of degrees do people do before a Master of Arts History and Curatorship? Well, there's one simple answer to that question: just about anything. You will have seen from my list of activities within the museum sector that it actually encompasses, you might say, fields such as education, art, event management, business management. I would suggest even degrees in and around law and digital design. It's quite a remarkable field. I'm thinking that most art museums that I've worked in really look for diversity of professional and personal experience in their hires. I think that particularly because the master's program can involve coursework, there's ample opportunity to, if you like, do any catch-up you feel necessary in relation to art history as such. And Max has got an answer to this one as well. Are you going to fire away, Max?
Sorry, Chris, so specifically which part did you want me to speak to? Sorry?
Oh, I just thought you were going to, you just said you would like to answer this question live.
Oh, that's just to remove the questions once they've been answered by
I'm sorry. That's
okay.
That's my poor Zoom chops. Anyway, I hope that has answered the question. Yeah, 6 months ago, I don't think any of my colleagues had used Zoom before, and now we're just buzzing on it. I would approach, your question was asked of a Masters of Art History and Art Curatorship. I'm old-fashioned in regard to the humanities. I think anyone who's had anyone who's got a sense of curiosity and a flexible approach to the way you engage with people about your interests, you could find yourself working very effectively in the museum sector, because it's a people and ideas sector, It has certain formalities in its governance and its operation and its compliance, but after that, it's anyone's good idea as to what a museum should be doing. Okay, let's see if there are any other questions. No, there are no open questions. So, look, I might just to follow through on that previous question without making you all dizzy, I'll just remind you of this section. With it, you know, I think if you're talking about what sort of background might lead you into an effective role, I think this gives you a real idea of the breadth of opportunity within the museum sector. It is, I think it's deceptive to think of museums as entirely about people who know a lot about art hanging art on walls. That's actually really only the tip of the iceberg. And all good museums have in the background good managers, good educators, good communicators, people with community sensibilities, people who are great on advocacy and fundraising. All of those skills are really essential within the museum and gallery sector. So, Max, shall we leave the lines open or wind it up if questions are running down?
We can wait for a few moments to see if there's any further questions, but
sure.
I mean, it's really up to you. If anybody does have any questions, though, I'd encourage them to speak up. We're happy to help.
Sure. And you look, if you know, it can be questions about some of the art I showed you, if that's piqued your interest, or about some of our people and what they're doing. It's, I mean, I think it's important, you know, when you're making decisions around your study, that you understand not just course structure and if you like, curriculum, but what, if you like, energy and knowledge and networks and contacts that the academic staff can bring to the table as well. I mean, I'm sure you're aware that ANU, like most other universities, is particularly interested in the capacity of its students and graduates to engage with industry, and not just in a sense of getting a job, but understanding their prospects and, in fact, what knowledge they might bring to the sector and how they might change that sector as well. Oh, good. Candice has just offered us the links for easy access as well on the programs and courses. Okay, I already possess the question is, I already possess a doctorate in biological sciences. Am I eligible for a PhD in art history? That is an interesting question. Max, what's your, I confess, I always just consider eligibility be a great idea for research, but there might be some technicalities there. What's your thoughts on that one, Max?
I don't think there's any particular technical, like restrictions for anybody applying for a PhD. If they've done a PhD in another discipline, then applying for a PhD in, say, art history. I don't think there's any structural or administrative sort of issues there. I mean, I can think anecdotally of a few examples off the top of my head of people who have done that already.
Sure,
You know,
sure.
pursued sort of academic study or research at that level, and then changed tack and moved into a different area. So I think that would be fine. I would encourage you to, I'll put a link in the chat in a moment, to have a look at the HDR or high degree research application web pages to go through the application process, to have a look at that. The only thing you might need is just academic records relating to PhD study, the same as you would provide undergraduate and postgraduate coursework.
Yeah, if I can chip in on that question, by the way, I've had sustained involvement with research practices within the School of Art and Design. The sciences at ANU are easily amongst the most common point of interdisciplinary collaboration at higher degree research level within the School of Art and Design. That includes the Fenner School, computer engineering, chemistry. So there is a very strong connect between our study both in studio and art history and in the sciences. And I think if you like, at an admissions level, the interest would be in the research proposal itself, a capacity to undertake sustained and intensive research, so a track record in developing, pursuing and delivering complex research. Then we have a question, is there any chance to take part in internships with some of the cultural institutions in Canberra? And the answer to that is an emphatic yes. In fact, our courses include a first semester, second semester internship program, one of which is on collection management and the other of which is on audience development. In a normal post or pre-COVID year, those placements were with entities such as the National Gallery of Australia, the Canberra Museum and Art Gallery, and a range of other entities. What happened this year, and that is an annual program with strong relationships. What happened this year was that many of our interns switched to an online internship. Some of them were doing that already because of the shift towards digital within the cultural institutions. And it was real world stuff. I actually read through the internship journals of some of those students, and it was very much hands-on work, in some instances really helping the cultural organisation open up some new territory in what they were doing. So that's an emphatic yes, and seen as very significant within the advanced bachelor's program in our courses. I'd also incidentally direct you, if you're interested in internships, to ANU's engagement with the Australian National Internship Program, which feeds students into public policy and government entities as well. And I'd just remind you that ANU was constituted as a public policy university. Its statutory goal is to contribute to policy and governance within Australia. So historically, the institution has always sought connections with the national institutions and agencies within Canberra. Now, I think we've had some great questions and very pertinent to choosing a degree and maximising the opportunities available within you to you within that degree, and thinking about connecting a new degree with prior study. So those are all sharply focused and they're questions that show some thought and planning about your direction. So that's a great approach to take. So, not enough snow for me to make a snowman out there, but it's something I'm going to investigate in just a few minutes when we finish up. I think since we're at the end of our time, I'll thank Max and Candice for assisting me, and thank you for participating and for your questions. And I hope to perhaps welcome you to CAHAT in our next academic year. Thanks for coming along.